My children told me they love me too much to watch me struggle with my finances. What they really meant was they loved my money too much to leave it alone. I'm 73 years old, and I thought I knew what betrayal looked like. I was wrong. My name is Margaret, and for 47 years, I balanced every checkbook, paid every bill, and saved every penny I could. When my husband Frank passed 3 years ago, I didn't fall apart financially like some widows do. I kept our little house, managed the insurance money, even learned how to use online banking. I was proud of that independence. At 73, I could still drive myself to the grocery store, still knew exactly how much was in my checking account, down to the penny, still caught the bank's errors when they made them dot. But my children, Michael, my eldest at 48, and Sarah, my baby at 45, they started noticing things I didn't think they should be noticing. "Mom, you bought the same birthday card twice for little Emma," Sarah mentioned during one of her visits, holding up 2 identical cards from my drawer. "You told me the same story about Mrs. Henderson's cat 3 times this week," Michael added, that concerned furrow appearing between his eyebrows that I'd grown to dread. Were those things true? Maybe. But Lord knows I'd repeated stories and bought duplicate items my whole life. Frank used to tease me about having enough birthday cards to supply a Hallmark store. These weren't signs of decline. They were just me being me, Dot. But the way they looked at each other when they thought I wasn't watching. That silent conversation between siblings that every parent recognizes, but pretends not to see. The comments became more frequent, more pointed. "Mom, I noticed you forgot to pay the electric bill last month." Sarah's voice carried that tone, the one she'd used when her teenagers missed curfew. "I didn't forget," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I was waiting for a deposit, to clear. The bill was paid before any late fee." "But you usually pay it on the 1st of the month," Michael chimed in. "You've always been so routine-oriented." Routine-oriented. As if being consistent was suddenly a sign of mental fragility. Instead of good financial sense, they meant well. I kept telling myself that as their visits became more frequent, their questions more probing, their offers to help more insistent, the intervention, though they'd never call it that, happened on a Tuesday in March. Both of them showed up, at my door with coffee and those serious faces parents wear when they're about to tell their children that the dog died. "Mom, we need to talk," Michael said, settling into Frank's old recliner like he belonged there. Sarah took my hands in hers, and I knew whatever was coming was going to change everything. "We've been talking, and we're worried about you," she began. "The missed bills, the confusion with dates, forgetting our conversations." "I'm not confused about anything," I interrupted, but my voice sounded smaller than I intended. "Mom, last week you called me at midnight asking where Dad was," Michael said gently. "You seemed genuinely surprised when I reminded you that he'd passed." My stomach dropped. I did remember that call, but I'd been half asleep, disoriented from a dream so vivid I could smell Frank's aftershave. It wasn't dementia. It was grief playing tricks on my sleep-addled mind, But sitting there in my own living room, with both my children staring at me with that mixture of love and pity, I started to doubt myself. "We think," Sarah continued, "it would be easier if we helped manage some of the financial stuff. Just the big things. The mortgage, the investments, making sure bills get paid on time. You could focus on the things that matter," Michael added. "Spending time with the grandkids, your garden, your book club. Let us worry about the paperwork." They made it sound so reasonable, so loving. "I've been handling money since before either. Of you could tie your shoes," I said. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was still true. We know, Mom. You taught us everything we know about budgeting and saving. Sarah squeezed my hands tighter. But maybe it's time to let us take care of you the way you took care of us. The way they talked, you'd think I was already 1 foot in a nursing home. But their words wormed their way into my confidence, made me question every small mistake, every moment of forgetfulness that was probably just normal aging. Just temporary, Michael promised, until you feel more steady. Just the checking account, Sarah added. We'll show you everything, include you in every decision. I should have said no. I should have asked why. If they were so concerned about my mental state, they wanted me to make such a major decision right then, under pressure, while I was feeling vulnerable. Instead, I signed the papers they'd brought with them. Joint account, holders, full access. You're still the primary account holder, Michael assured me as I signed my name with shaking hands. This just gives us the ability to help. For the first few weeks, it seemed like help. Michael set up automatic payments for my utilities. Sarah organized my filing system. They even got me one of those pill organizers, though I'd never had trouble remembering my medications. But then small things started feeling wrong. When I asked to see the bank statements, Sarah said she'd bring them next visit, then forgot. When I mentioned wanting to increase my donation to the church, Michael suggested we wait and see how the budget looks next month. I started feeling like a guest in my own financial life. The breaking point came on a Thursday in June. I was at Kroger, filling my cart with the usual milk, bread. The good yogurt Frank used to say was too expensive, but that I'd been buying anyway since he died. A small rebellion that made me smile. At checkout, I handed over my debit card and waited for the familiar beep of approval. Instead, I got the sound every senior citizen dreads. The sharp error tone that means insufficient funds. I'm sorry, ma'am, but this card is being declined, the young cashier said, loud enough for the growing line behind me to hear. My face burned with embarrassment. That's impossible. There should be over $30,000 in that account. The cashier tried again. Same result. Maybe try credit instead, she suggested kindly, but I could feel the impatience of the customers behind me. I fumbled through my purse for my credit card, hands shaking not from age but from humiliation and confusion. The credit card went through, but I barely registered paying as my mind raced. I drove straight to the bank, my groceries forgotten in the back seat. Mrs. Patterson. The teller smiled as I approached her window. How can I help you today? I need to see my account balance, please. There seems to be some mistake. She typed on her keyboard, and I watched her expression change from professional pleasantness to concern. Ma'am, which account are you asking about? My checking account. The one I've had here for 23 years. More typing. A longer pause. Mrs. Patterson, your checking account shows a balance of $127.43. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. That's impossible. There was over $30,000 in that account last month. Let me print your recent statement, she said, and I could hear the carefully trained sympathy in her voice. The paper that emerged from her printer told a story I didn't want to believe. Withdrawal after withdrawal, each one authorized by my joint account holders. $5,000 here, $8,000 there. A massive $15,000 transfer just 3 days ago. My children had been systematically emptying my account for months. Ma'am, are you all right? The teller asked, but her voice sounded far away. These withdrawals, I managed to say, pointing at the paper with a finger that wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't authorize these. The account shows they were made by authorized users, she explained gently. You have 2 joint account holders listed. Joint account holders. The words I'd signed without really understanding what they meant. I drove home in a daze, the bank statement crumpled in my fist. By the time I pulled into my driveway, shock had begun its slow transformation into something harder, sharper. Rage, I didn't call them immediately. Some instinct I didn't fully understand told me to wait, to think, to plan. Instead, I called my sister Dorothy in Phoenix. Dorothy, who'd never had children and had always been the practical one, the one who read the fine print and ask the hard questions. Dottie, I said when she answered, and my voice broke on her nickname. I think I've made a terrible mistake. I told her everything. The concerned looks, the gentle pressure, the papers I'd signed, the empty account. With each word, I felt less crazy and more certain that something horrible had been done to me. Oh, honey. Dorothy's voice was tight with anger. This isn't about you being too old to handle money. This is about them being too greedy to wait for their inheritance. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could practically hear her thinking. Margaret, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Don't confront them yet. Don't let them know you know. First, we need to document everything. Over the next week, Dorothy walked me through gathering evidence like a detective coaching a witness. Bank statements going back 6 months. Copies of the papers I'd signed. A notebook where I recorded every conversation I could remember. Every pressure tactic they'd used. The thing about financial elder abuse, Dorothy explained during one of our daily calls, is that it often looks legitimate on paper. You gave them permission. But the way they got that permission, that's where the fraud is. I also called the Area Agency on Aging and spoke with a counselor named Linda, who specialized in financial exploitation. Her voice was kind, but professional, as she walked me through my options. What they've done is unfortunately common, Linda told me. Adult children convince their parents they're losing capacity, then use that manufactured concern to gain financial control. The good news is, you sound completely competent to me, and we can help you fight this. She connected me with a lawyer, who specialized in elder law, a sharp woman named Jennifer Morrison who didn't mince words. Mrs. Patterson, based on what you've told me, this isn't just family drama. This is likely criminal fraud, she said during our first meeting. They used undue influence to gain access to your accounts, then stole your money. The fact that they had legal access doesn't make it legal theft. For the first time since that day at the grocery store, I felt something besides helpless anger. I felt hope. But first, we needed to catch them in the act. Jennifer suggested I try to access my account online, document any new withdrawals, and, if possible, record my children's. Explanations for where the money had gone. Don't let them know you're suspicious, she advised. We want to see what story they tell you when you start asking questions. So I waited, and watched, and gathered evidence like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. I called Michael, first, keeping my voice carefully neutral. Honey, I tried to use my debit card yesterday, and it was declined. Could you take a look at the account and see if there's some problem? There was a pause. Too long. Too calculated. Oh, Mom, I meant to call you about that. We had to move some money around to pay for that roof repair you needed. Roof repair. I looked up at my perfectly intact ceiling and felt the last of my doubt evaporate. What roof repair? The one we discussed last month? You were worried about. Those loose shingles? I had mentioned loose shingles 2 years ago before Frank died, and we'd fixed them ourselves. Michael, how much was this repair? Don't worry about the details, Mom. The important thing is your house is safe. Don't worry about the details. as if my own money was too complicated for me to understand. "I'd like to see the receipt," I said. Another. Pause. "Sarah has all the paperwork. I'll have her bring it by this weekend." When Sarah came by on Saturday, she didn't bring any paperwork. Instead, she brought more concern. "Mom, Michael told me you were confused about the roof repair. Are you feeling all right?" The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost second-guessed myself. Almost. "I'm feeling fine," I said evenly. "I'd just like to understand where my money went." "Your money's safe," she assured me, taking my hands the way she had that day they'd convinced me to sign over access. "We're taking good care of everything." "Then you won't mind if I see the account statements?" Her smile flickered. "Of course not. I just don't have them with me today." "Sarah," I said, looking directly into my daughter's eyes, "where is my money?" "Mom, you're starting to worry me. Maybe we should make an appointment with Dr. Stevens." Dr. Stevens, my family physician who'd known me for 15 years and would certainly confirm that I was completely mentally competent. That quote, S, when I knew they were never going to give me a straight answer. The confrontation happened the following Tuesday, but not in my living room where they felt comfortable and in control. It happened in Jennifer Morrison's conference room, with a court reporter present and a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit taking notes. I quote, "Dee invited them for what I told them was a family meeting about getting my affairs in order. They arrived looking pleased with themselves, probably thinking they'd finally convinced me to make their theft permanent. Instead, they walked into a room where their mother sat flanked by a lawyer and a police officer." "What's this about, Mom?" Michael asked, but his voice had lost its patronizing gentleness. "This is about the $37,000 you've stolen from my checking account," I said, sliding copies of the bank statements across the table. Sarah, quote, his face went white. "Mom, we didn't steal anything. You gave us permission." "You told me I was losing my mind," I interrupted, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. "You convinced me I couldn't handle my own affairs. Then you systematically looted my account." "We were protecting you," Michael tried, but Jennifer cut him off. "Mr. Patterson, my client has documented evidence of financial exploitation. The question isn't whether you had legal access to the account. It's how you obtained that access and what you did with it once you had it." The detective leaned forward. "We've reviewed the bank records. $37,000 withdrawn. Over 4 months. None of it for documented expenses benefiting Mrs. Patterson. We'd like to hear your explanation." Watching my children realize they weren't in control anymore was both satisfying and heartbreaking. These were the babies I'd nursed through fevers, the toddlers I'd taught to tie their shoes, the teenagers I'd trusted with my car keys. There was no roof repair. I said quietly. There were no emergency expenses. There was just greed. Sarah started crying. "Mom, we were going to pay it back. We just needed to borrow it for a while." "Borrow?" Jennifer's voice was sharp. "Mrs. Patterson, did your children ever ask to borrow money from you?" "No, they told me I was too confused to manage it myself." "And did they ever discuss repayment terms? Interest? A timeline for returning the funds?" "No. They told me not to worry about the details." The detective closed his notebook. "Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, you're both under arrest for financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Watching your own children get handcuffed is a special kind of agony I wouldn't wish on anyone. But watching them finally face consequences for what they'd done to me felt like breathing freely for the first time in months. It took 8 months, but I got most of my money back. Michael and Sarah pled guilty to avoid jail time, but they had to make full restitution plus penalties. The house Michael had bought with my money had to be sold. Sarah's new car was repossessed. They both had to perform community service at a senior center, which I thought was particularly fitting. The hardest part wasn't the legal battle or the financial recovery. It was accepting that my own children, people I'd loved and sacrificed for my entire adult life, had been willing to steal my security and dignity because they thought I was too old and weak to stop them. But here's what I learned. Being 73 doesn't make me stupid. Being widowed doesn't make me helpless. And trusting people doesn't make me naive. It makes me human. The day I got my final restitution check, I opened a new bank account. At a different bank. With only my name on it. Then. I updated my will. My children will still inherit from me someday. Because I'm their mother. And that's what mothers do. But they'll inherit a lot less than they would have if they'd just waited instead of stealing. And they'll never, ever have access to my finances again. If you're watching this and you're worried about an older person in your life being taken advantage of, or if you're an older person who's been told you're too confused to handle your own affairs, please know that help is available. Financial elder abuse is real. It's common, and it's often committed by family members who convince themselves they're doing it out of love. But theft is theft, no matter who does it or how they justify it. Trust your instincts. Document everything, and don't be afraid to fight back. I thought I was too old to handle money. Turns out, I was just old enough to handle justice. Share your story below if you've experienced financial abuse. You're not alone, and you're stronger than they think you are.